Thank you, everyone. That was some video. I hadn't seen it yet. I thought we'd get a little exercise. I'm going to go off script for a moment, just to warn people. How many, if you could stand, if you were a member of a Green Light Committee or the National Election Readiness Committee, one of the campaign committees across this country? I'm looking for you. They've probably seen me so often they don't want to be here. Oh, I'm seeing some of them. Now, could you stand if you ran in the 2015 election as a candidate, elected or not? Now, keep standing. If you were a campaign manager, keep standing. If you were a campaign manager or a chief agent on it, because I often said that was the most important person a candidate needed to have by their side, could you please stand up? Now, anybody who knocked on a door or made a phone call in the 2015 campaign, please stand up. So now you got to sit down and listen to me for a few minutes. You are the heart of this movement. Your stories, your tweets, it is me managing my Twitter account, your Facebook posts, I'm keeping track of as many of them as I can, and because they would fuel me. And the incredible team of field workers across this country, the staff and the volunteers at headquarters every day with me, we followed your stories because they kept us inspired. And today, it is an absolute pleasure and honor to stand before you as your 2015 National Election Readiness Chair and Campaign Director. Thank you for having me here. I thought about saying, you made it easy for me, but that would not be true. You did make it the experience of a lifetime. And today, I would like to reflect on the experience with you for a few moments. I want to talk to you about 3 campaign themes: hard work and taking evidence-based risks, that's one; the people behind the numbers; and our not-so-secret obsession at National Campaign Headquarters. You're going to have to wait till the end to hear what that was. I couldn't help, so starting with hard work and evidence-based risks, I couldn't help but think back to the last biennial in Montreal as I looked forward to Winnipeg. Let me take you back with me for a quick moment. Only just a couple of years ago, not a single one of those candidates we just saw standing were nominated. We didn't have a single candidate across the country nominated at that time. But potential candidates were everywhere. 8 a.m. sessions on campaign strategy were packed, and there was a buzz in the air in Montreal. There was also some skepticism and some chatter in the hallways with each other, sometimes with a few reporters, that's okay, about whether open nominations were the right thing, whether they might impede women from succeeding, whether there might be stealth single-issue takeovers. Do any of these arguments sound familiar in 2016? But we moved forward together, and what a team we had in the 2015 election. As our brilliant Équipe Trudeau French ad said, "Ce sont des gens comme vous et moi."
It's people like you and me with exceptional competence.
Extraordinary. And because it was 2015, and because of your support and hard work, we have an incredible women's caucus, a women's caucus that is bigger than our entire caucus pre-election. We have a rural caucus that is bigger than our entire caucus before the election. We had a small caucus to start. And tens of thousands of Canadians got involved in the nomination process and thus the political process. And I'm not just talking about the tens of thousands that got engaged in Surrey, British Columbia, but the tens and tens and tens of thousands that got involved right across this country. Je me souviens des
I remember the discussions we held in the hallways, and let's be honest, it didn't come just from the media, to the effect that the Trudeau name was toxic in Quebec, and probably even more toxic in Alberta, that we wouldn't be able to win a single seat in the west of the country or in rural areas, that to hope for a majority of seats in Ontario, a percentage with the two figures in BC, or a return in force in Quebec, that was way too ambitious, without saying that, counting all the seats winning all the seats in the Atlantic region was totally unthinkable. But despite the people who had doubts, who questioned the strategy, we just looked straight ahead and we concentrated ourselves on the work we had to do, and we did it together. We opened our doors. We kept our minds open and we tested our theories. We were not afraid to be too ambitious and to take risks. Calculated risks, of course.
To today, my friends. Despite the cynics who thought a positive message would never beat attack ads about our leaders' nice hair, that young people would never actually turn out to vote, so we shouldn't waste time there, we persevered, we worked hard, and I think it turned out pretty darn well. I'm proud to think it is because together in greater numbers than I think any of us anticipated in Montreal, I actually looked back. It was a little embarrassing to look back at a video of yourself where I said, we need tens of thousands of volunteers. Well, just wait till you hear how many we had later. We built a team and a plan that Canadians supported, engaged with, voted for, and trusted. So congratulations. And let's talk about the people behind the numbers now. Because apparently I have this thing now. My husband, my wonderful husband, smiles at this every time he hears it, especially when he catches me counting on my fingers, that I'm the woman known for numbers now. But I hear this an expectation. I now need to talk about numbers, so I thought I'd tell you my favorites. You may have heard these before, but I can't repeat them enough about the campaign. What is greater than the number 80,000? That was the number of volunteers that we had signed up and engaged in the campaign in 2015. Over 80,000 volunteers. So we more than met our goal, though we were always pushing for more. And do you know that another 4,000 signed up, just as a bonus number here, another 4,000 signed up to volunteer between October 20th and December 31st, 2015, after the election? So it really does keep going, folks. We couldn't have achieved these next numbers if it wasn't for that first one, and that's why that first volunteer number is my favorite. But my second favorite, over 12 million. That incredible team of volunteers, all of you, reached out to Canadians over 12 million times. That's phone calls and door knocks. And, bonus number, over 25% of that work, those phone calls and door knocks, was done before that 78-day campaign even began. And that our achievement grew in terms of the numbers we could do by day throughout the course of the campaign. So imagine if the campaign had been even longer. Kidding. So over 80,000 volunteers reached out over 12 million times, and that led to, as some of you discussed, I believe, on a panel this morning, to over 4 million actual conversations with Canadians in every corner of this country. Now that is a field program, my friends. That is a movement. That is what allowed us to stay connected in every part of our organization to what mattered to Canadians. And that's just what we tracked. I know not all of you enter your data yet. And there are still some of you determined to do it your way. I'm on to you. There's a smaller number of you now. I'm still I'm still going to be after you, and we're going to convert you yet. But to the 99% of you who did enter your data so that we could track these wonderful numbers, let's be honest. Despite the narrative of my love for numbers and that the party's become a party of numbers now, it can be a bit cold to talk about numbers, especially if you don't know them as well as some of us got to. Some of us had the pleasure of spending our time debating every metric, from eyeballs on Facebook versus YouTube videos, to ratios of door knocks to phone calls, from radio ad buys against TV ad buys, and which baseball game more Canadians might be watching. We spent our days and many nights we actually did have these debates. We spent our days and many nights talking about numbers and turning each one of them into a meaningful element of the campaign. But my co-conspirator that you saw in the video earlier, Jerry Butts, would swing by headquarters early on in the campaign on a down day for the plane. And he would remind us what the numbers were really about, what he was seeing out there on the road. And he went around to the whiteboards throughout campaign headquarters, and he's kind of tall, and then he got up on a chair, so he was even taller, so it put it up really high. No one could erase it. And he wrote 3 words: people, people, people. That was really what the campaign was about. That was what the numbers were about. It was about recruiting and activating volunteers, engaging Canadians on the issues that mattered the most to them, and making voting the easiest, most important moment of every Canadian's day, whether they were voting in advanced polls or on election day. Because we all know the easier it is, the more likely to vote, and we want them to vote. It was all about people and what would drive them to engage with us. Only people could change the numbers that we were looking at on the page or on the screen, as the case may be. The numbers, though, could tell us about the people. They could tell our field team in Vancouver that the best time to canvass was when it was cloudy or rainy. That was when you had to go blitz, because if the sunshine was out in Vancouver, no one was home. We actually learned those kinds of things. They could tell us what Canadians were saying at the doors and how often. They could tell us which teams had the most energy and which teams had the most volunteers. Those weren't always the same thing. They could tell us at headquarters how ready a local campaign was for central support and amplification. And that brings me to the final theme I wanted to talk to you about today, and that was our not-so-secret obsession at headquarters in Ottawa. It actually wasn't numbers. We weren't obsessed with partisanship or the latest headlines either, but with the needs, the uniqueness, and the successes of our local campaigns and how we could help them. At our new LPC offices, we'd actually literally moved in the weekend that the writ was dropped. It was well-timed, one would argue. The walls were covered with numbers right around the office, from the ground on up to the ceiling, riding by riding. And because it wasn't true unless it could be backed up by numbers. Each field meeting, we talked about our best riding success story that week and what riding was facing a challenge that we wanted to help them solve for. We did this for months, years before the campaign. And what do I mean by a riding that was ready for support? Let me tell you about 2 ridings that demonstrated everything that worked during the campaign. Let me bring you into the LPC boardroom for a moment. Speakerphone in the middle of the room, my favorite meeting. Somewhere in this room, though they've heard me so many times, I would understand if they weren't here. But if they were here, Dan and Sean and Hillary and Jeremy and others, they're smiling because they know I'm about to tell you about our RAP meetings. We also had meetings called AC/DC and Metallica, but that's a story for another time. The RAP meeting stood for Research, Analytics, and Pathways. We would do the research, hear about the analytics, and determine the pathways in this meeting multiple times a week for months, and even more during the campaign. How healthy was a riding organization? What patterns could we see? What insights could we glean? Did we need to change course? Right up until the last week of the campaign, we kept testing ourselves and testing our theories. And 2 weeks before Election Day, we learned, anyone in the room from Hastings, Lennox, and Addington? So we learned you were doing pretty well. And we were feeling a lot stronger than we thought, we might have originally predicted for your riding. You, of course, knew better. We zoomed in on it at our RAP meeting, and I mean, literally, we could do that. We could zoom in on it on the screen, and wanted to check what their ground game looked like. How much money did they have, and what might it take to give them an extra edge? We looked at how their neighbors were doing, their neighboring ridings, and whether they could help. Well, Hastings, you had a beautiful ground game up and going. Your neighbors were strong, and we knew, looking at that we could do this. When I get asked, when did I know things were turning? It was moments like this, when we looked at our advertising in the area to see how we could beef it up a little. It was actually, though, when we decided to send a leader to Hastings. Because, by the way, there was only one riding in the country the leader visited that we didn't win. And so we weren't sending the leader where there weren't ground organizations, where we couldn't pull people. We followed the people. We followed your hard work. For Jerry, his moment was Fundy Royal. Anyone here from Fundy Royal? I heard some murmurings. You're not as loud there. Well, yes. It was the one time in the campaign he questioned the RAP team. Me too. He got word on the plane we were sending the plane to Fundy Royal, and Jerry called the data team directly. The Liberal Party had only won that riding once since Confederation. I think he thought we had a soft spot for the candidate, which we did, as she was working and the team was working so hard. But the data team explained to him what we were seeing. We stuck with the plan, and we now have newly elected MPs Mike Bossio and Elena Lockhart. And you did it. There are so many other examples of this hard work, this discipline, this unity of purpose across the entire organization, from Fundy Royal to Chicoutimi to Hastings to Kelowna to Edmonton, and here, of course, in Winnipeg. So, to conclude, we worked hard. We worked together for a long, long time to build this movement. Montreal 2 years ago seems like a lifetime, I think probably to many of us. Sometimes it wasn't easy. Whether it was me, because yes, I did this, throwing the Liberal Party Constitution, respectfully, of course, against the wall, or should I say the 18 Liberal Party constitutions against the wall before falling asleep with it on the night table for months after the leadership campaign, trying to sort through it all. Whether it was seeing volunteers' hearts breaking for their candidates that did everything right, but they aren't sitting in Parliament, at least not yet. Whether it was fighting the fears of trying new things and taking risks, or whether it was just the enormity of the work that the team had to put in, playing catch-up, sometimes surpassing, and often creating the most modern campaign techniques in 2015. Whether it was busting old Liberal myths open, or busting myths about Liberals, with data, often, or whether it was learning to trust ourselves in the darker days. We heard Sean Casey referring a little bit to that, and staying relentlessly disciplined and positive, even when the anonymous trolls or anonymous supposed Liberals sniped from the sidelines. We moved forward together. We did it. Mais n'oublions pas tout ce que nous avons dû surmonter.
But don't forget everything that we had to overcome in order to get this far. We worked extremely hard. Some of us, well, actually, the majority of us, are still tired. But we must continue to open our doors to people who are full of energy. We must continue to encourage more Canadians to join our movement. We must continue to learn from each other and from our neighbors, whether they be Liberals or not. We are at our best when we keep an open mind, when we take risks, and when we listen. It's in everyone's interest to continue learning together.
We are at our best. We are at our best when we are open, when we are taking risks, calculated risks, and when we are listening at the doors. So this is a long way of saying to you, you should come to my campaign debrief me and a few panelists are having later this afternoon, because we'd like to hear from you, because we need to keep learning together. It's an even longer way of saying, when you get home, 3 words for you: go knock doors. Friends, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for your support, your hard work, your positive energy, your passion, your relentless discipline is an inspiration to me. Let's keep sharing. Let's keep growing. There is no one I trust more than our volunteers, this movement of Canadians, to keep making great things happen. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.